didn't have anything prepared. I am
Okay, that's
excited for y'all to
Okay.
do what you're doing.
All right, so let's move on to the minutes.
I did submit, just so the person in the public knows, and the person in the public is Derek Kalin.
Oh, yes,
And we
Derek
appreciate,
Kalin.
we appreciate you attending. I did give them the Strong Towns information, just so you know, and this commission knows that I am forwarding this on to planning and zoning in their next packet as well, as a point of information.
I suppose my comment can just be on this. So yes, Derek Halen, 116 Ridgewood Drive. I have been doing research on affordable housing and trying to, because like everybody knows that it's a problem, but I have yet to see like really clear documentation for people coming up with policy on how you tackle the problem. And there's a very interesting nonprofit called Strong Towns, which has produced that housing ready checklist. And they specifically say, well, okay, there's a lot going on at the national level. Here are steps that can be taken at the local level through means of zoning code. So I reviewed I think it's an interesting guide, and I think Rocky Hill, as far as I can tell, does some of the things recommended. It sort of does some of the other things, and then there are other things that it doesn't do, which is a very convoluted way of saying we're partway through this checklist right now, from my understanding. So I'm glad that you folks who are experts in this issue are looking into how to tackle it.
Any comments? Somebody else to say?
I have a comment that when we discuss this, feel free to come back and join us and participate.
Is there a Connecticut town that has adopted this idea?
I don't know of towns that have specifically said we're 6 out of 6. I don't know that.
That usually helps
Sure.
a subsequent town
I can look
full
into
of
that.
doubters. Say, well, who's doing this?
Yeah.
And you know, the closer it is in similar town or geographic nearness, sometimes it's influential that way.
Sure.
You should be aware that, and I passed something out for us to talk about later, is some legislation on the governor's desk waiting for signature, and I haven't seen any news, so I don't know if he signed anything or not yet. But we'll talk about that. That also deals with affordable, a lot of housing
Yes.
issues.
Okay, let's move on to the review of the minutes of January 16th. Is there a motion?
I'll motion to approve the minutes from January 16th.
All those in favor?
Second. Aye. Aye.
All right, let's move on to the minutes of April 3rd.
Yep.
Anybody in favor of approving them?
I'll make
a motion to approve it.
And I'll second.
All right, we're done there. Discussion of former I-291 property. And just to confirm, there was nothing in the package about that?
There was only, I think I put a map.
Yep.
Map in there.
The last page.
There was a small map in there that I think Tom had gotten for us. I know this had come up, and I had sent over, back in April, and this was like, in April of 25, we had, sent up, an email to the town manager. I copied our chairman, Stephen Gala, on this.
Yes. This is the one?
Correct, concerning an interest in the access to I-291 property. You have bigger copies here if you'd like them.
No, it's not. You're messing with me.
If you'd like the bigger copies. there's bigger
That
copies.
works too.
And ideally, it would have been nice to put it on the town council agenda for discussion purposes. They kind of, and the fact that this body kind of wanted like a placeholder on it to say, you know, we're interested in it possibly for affordable housing. There's a lot of things we need to learn about it first, but what he did was he gave me his DOT files.
Who's he?
He is the town manager,
Yeah.
Ray Carpentino. So it had been offered up to the town in the past. There was a reference and some emails back in, I don't have copies because this might have been a land purchase, so I can't really just
Okay.
do that. But there was emails back and forth in the spring of 2023. First, they had to do additional analysis on it, does the town want to buy the property, yes or no, dollar amounts, and then Ray at that time said, we need to do more analysis on this. This was back in the spring of '23. And then there was legislation being proposed, raised bills. Kerry Wood was instrumental in doing the raise, they had a bill raised to actually look at that and convey land at the time. In April of this year, they were amidst their budget, so that wasn't a good time to bring it back to them. That's what I was told. So if this body, that's what I was told. If this body wants to bring it back again, I'm happy to do it.
Do you have the number that the state gave us the last time? Was that 274?
I believe it was 262.
We can't actually move any further on it until we get a number from the state, an accurate number. So I think we should approach the town council again and ask them to, either through Kerry Wood or an email to whoever, Transportation Department owns it, I think, and tell them that we're interested and would like to know what their current number is. At that point, we can start looking for grants. And also that we'll have an accurate survey of exactly what the property is that they're willing to sell us.
Sure. Does anybody else have any comments, questions?
So it's 5.3 acres, that's this section. And there was further study that needed to be done, that was what was determined in 2023?
That's, yeah. I mean, we don't know, you have easements through here. There's
Yeah.
obviously construction costs. There are some wetlands on here. This doesn't show you that.
Right,
But
was
so-
that what they
so-
needed to evaluate?
I assume so. I was not
Was-
involved
okay.
with that at the time.
Because I think it's been looked at prior to 2023 too, right?
That I don't know.
What do you mean by what?
Like, this has come up before, and is conversation with the state about whether we wanted it, or whether they would release it to us or whatever. That's happened like, maybe 10 years ago or something like that, right? Sooner than 2023.
In talking to various people,
Yeah.
is that there has been interest, but as far as I know, that's the only time that the town approached the state.
Okay.
Yeah, which was recent.
Yes,
That was
Like-
very recent.
a few years ago.
Yeah, 23, that time frame.
Yeah, you're right.
So
I
the-
guess in 22, they talked about a raised bill
Okay.
at the General Assembly to convey part of that land to the town.
Right.
Yeah.
We talked about that. Yeah, I guess it never went anywhere.
So we would need to get, so let's say everybody said, yeah, this is a good idea, we want to do it. We'd have to get a current value. We'd have to have, like an official survey,
The
samples,
state
stuff
will do
like
the
that.
survey.
Okay.
They survey it so that they could give us an accurate value and the details of the property.
I think the survey part is
Yeah.
Okay. Right, but it's also, but this doesn't show, wetland or,
No, that
you
would
know,
be. part of-
elevation or any of that
No,
stuff.
Yeah, okay.
no.
That would
And
be ours.
that would be on us.
Yes.
Yeah.
That would be
Well-
on us.
May I?
Yeah, but that's why we're here.
Okay, so there are a lot of parties here. There's the state of Connecticut DOT is the owner,
Mhm.
I understand. And the state of Connecticut, governor, Department of Housing, all kinds of people are encouraging affordable housing. They just spent bills that you want us to read about relate to affordable housing. I believe that the law says that when the state wants to get rid of a piece of property, that they're obligated first to talk to other state departments, then utilities, and then the town, or the town, and then utilities, and so on. So we're pretty much first in line as the town of Rocky Hill to say we're interested in it. And the existing law says that the state should get fair market value. But that's where I think the uncertainty exists. When I spoke with our state rep, she said there are lots of ways that they do this. It could be, okay, the DOT has a bunch of appraisers and they hire outside people. I used to do work for them as an outside appraiser. So they establish a value, and that changes on any day of the whatever, the market.
Yeah.
Okay, but, so then value's established, and then I think that becomes the boogie person of the moment. Oh, well, where are we gonna get that much money? But what happens sometimes, the state then will say, we agree to sell it to you, and we will give you a mortgage to do that. And that if you do what you say you're going to do, we'll forgive the mortgage. Okay? There's lots of transactions like that, especially when there's a public interest in doing it. They own it, they don't really need the $500,000 or whatever it is. And I think that's maybe where we go first back to our state rep and say, we as the affordable housing, we want to go forward. And I think we took a vote and we said that's what we wanted to do. But the trouble is we bump up to some thing that's behind one of these office doors. We're not party to. Well, we don't want to spend the money, and I'm going to come back to strategies of the affordable housing plan in a second here. And I think we need to find out from the owner of the property, is there a way that they can meet their public policy commitment by working with us? And I think that then becomes, if they say, all right, we're going to sell it to you, and we're going to take a piece of paper back, which in non-legal terms means you ain't going to have to pay us for it. That meets all that legality. And then now the town council will say, okay, you got the land, what are you going to do with it? Because yes, there are all the kinds of restrictions that you're aware of. There's some legal restrictions by easement, there's some physical restrictions, but this is actually a fairly elevated, well forested piece of land off of Maple Street. It's, I believe, slightly above the single-family detached on either side. If there were, this is just plucked from the air, if you did single-family detached affordable housing, that's gonna have less of, not in my backyard, but by those existing single-family 20,000 square foot lots or so on. It lends itself to a buffer, comes onto a state highway, Route 3. I think in terms of what I perceive as what we could do for affordable housing, it's an ideal piece. It's not in a crummy location. It has all kinds of services in the immediate neighborhood. And I think that the state rep is a little frustrated not knowing what's going on behind the doors here. And I don't know what's gone on in the past. But the land is there. As they say, they're not making any more of it. It's not so big, it's not so small, it's just kind of right. You could do a few units at a time. yes, we'd have to, I assume that there's a large sewer line in Route 3, and all the utilities are available there. I don't think that's a risk. There is a cost. And I'm of the unicorn and rainbow opinion that you could apply to Eversource and say, you know, you're in here, we need you to just drop the lines in, put it in. Of the unicorn, I would go to Liberty Bank and say, we've identified a tiny home. You can do it in increments of 70,000 apiece or something like that. And you go to all the parties, you know, banks, they used to have Community Reinvestment Act. And they could be for sale housing, they could be rental, all that needs to be sorted out. But I just think it's something to deal with. The infrastructure part, I think, can be solved. The land part and so on. If the town council continues to do whatever they do behind that door, we're not going anywhere on anything, okay? You know, we can talk about all the sort of pie in the sky, we could do this and we could do that, and look what they're doing in this state or that, but it's all useless. This is a tangible thing, in my opinion. It's right here. And then this is my segue into the affordable housing plan, which,
Well, do you wanna, we have to continue with this as well.
okay, all right, so that's my
Maybe
2
get
cents.
back to
Anybody
that.
wanna
Oh,
say,
okay.
why don't you turn the meeting over to Vivian, or whatever, which I'll do in a moment. So,
I concur with what you're saying.
So, and you make a great case too, that like, the utilities are there, if it's single-family detached, or even small multifamily detached, it's not as huge a impact to the next. And if it's only like 200 and something thousand, that's not a lot to get from the state when we get $2 million just to rebuild something, you know what I mean? So that's all good. And I agree. My understanding from speaking also with the state rep about this is we just need to show some action from the town that with next steps, and the state would be more than happy to get something on the books to meet some of these affordable housing goals. The only thing I would add along the lines of this when we're looking at, oh, this looks like an easy thing to do is, or an easy first step, it's not really easy, but a first step is also, I mean, we do already have land that is owned by the town that could be turned into more affordable housing in the area around the housing authority. And they've already done surveys, and they've already mocked up buildings. They could put 40 units in there. And all we have to do is, same thing, go to the state, say, will you fund this somehow? Go through CHAFA or whatever. And I feel like both approaches are good. I feel like everything, this is, Connecticut's the land of steady behaviors, and Rocky Hill's no different, is we can spin our wheels on this like we've been doing for 2, 3, 5, 10, 15 years. Or we can work with land that we already have. Or we can do both.
The Housing Authority, I know they have a grant to study it and do whatever
Yeah.
plans, and I'm waiting.
I've seen
for
the
that.
plans.
Yeah, I'm waiting
the
to
plans.
see
It
that
looks-
too.
It looks
And
doable.
once it's done, we can
also encourage
Jump in.
that.
Yeah. jump into that, but
Yeah.
that hasn't come to us yet.
Yeah, I think it's just done recently. They just did the surveys and they did
Yes.
some mock-ups. And
Yes, I
obviously,
know
there's
we
not
were-
the details of that yet, and they're figuring
Yeah.
out some of the stuff. But I think they've already spent the
That's-
money for the surveys, and so, that's something, as well. I think we should.
well, I agree with you,
Okay.
and
And it's
I
already
think we should
zoned
try to
appropriately
do
and all those
both.
things, yeah.
The difficulty with what you just said is you've got the housing authority is another entity that's involved. That land is owned by the housing authority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, and you got somebody who's been there for 40 years running the housing authority, I'm all for it, but I don't immediately see it unfolding.
Well, it's a great expense, you know, the same as this is not gonna be cheap either. The land might be, but the building of it. And so it's a larger dollar amount to clear the land, build buildings, lay the infrastructure, even when you already have the utilities there and everything
Yeah,
too, you know?
It's my opinion that until there is an identified site with a general unfolding plan, getting financial support or contribution of services and so on, it's too unknown. I think we need specificity. It would be this site, that site, or some other site. But we need to say, okay, this is what we're going to attempt to do if we want to add affordable housing to Rocky Hill. And there'll be nothing that's without criticism. There'll be nothing that's perfect. But we need to begin to do something. Or we sit back and say, well, there are all these legislative proposals and different theories about doing things and so on. Yeah, that may come to fruition, but this one just seems like it's there. We have somebody at the stake who seems to want to help. And it goes to, may I bring up my other issue? In the affordable housing plan, and the first thing was organize housing efforts, establish a municipal committee. Okay, so we're the committee now. B was establish a special housing fund. And I know it's not on the agenda, maybe I suggest we put it on the agenda for the next time. And the language is a little squishy because it says, B, establish a special housing fund. The town of Rocky Hill can establish a special housing fund, such as a housing trust fund, to serve as a repository for housing-related grants, fees, gifts, and bequests, and then there's strategies in it. I don't know what the intent of the current town council is, but I think we need to force that step. Maybe I missed a meeting, fell asleep. Do we have any on developing housing fund?
At this time, no. However, one of my tasks was to go through the ordinance book to write down a list of things that we in Community Development Services, that department in particular, wants to either add, update, or modify. And I have two single-spaced sides of a piece of paper, and that's one of them.
Yeah, part of the problem is, Tom, it had the thing about a fee related to permits.
I know that-
I don't know if you saw the Supreme Court came out with a case in the last couple of days, I think, saying that you could not do that.
Right.
Yeah.
But there are other ways, that either someone gives or.
Sorry, just point of order, can I make a suggestion that we add this as an agenda item for the next
Yeah.
meeting?
Because I think it's an impediment.
Oh, yeah.
Going forward, not having.
And it's something we
resolved.
should, yeah, it's
Good.
something we should, it's a strategy that, should discuss and make a recommendation on and
Yeah.
where we think that could go. I think there's plenty of, I think we could talk about that for longer than we're gonna be
Okay.
able to.
Mr. Chairman, you
handle.
now have the meeting.
Thank you.
We're on item
Just-
5.
Item 5. Well,
Well,
going
I
back to
don't know if
4.
we're going, yeah,
Have we-
we still can talk about 4.
Yeah,
Okay.
just had one question because I
Oh.
apologize for being late. Did this get on the town council agenda?
No, I had reported that I had sent an email back in April
Yeah.
concerning the committee's interest in putting a placeholder on that property. That was also during budget time. But he had shared with me, he meaning the town manager, has shared with me some of his information, which is basically like deeds to the property, and the fact that in 2022, that the state rep had gone to the state legislature about a raised bill to have them convey the property to Rocky Hill. At the time, the town was looking at a possible $262,000 to purchase that property, and it came back, we need to do more analysis, we the town, and that's kind of where it
But
was.
that was how long ago?
That was in 2023,
Okay.
and then that's,
We don't know if they did more analysis.
I would say no.
Yeah, because
'Cause I-
who would be the one doing
I'd be
it?
involved with that too.
Yeah.
Kim would have probably been the one doing it.
I'd be involved with that too.
Yeah.
You know, before we have more in-depth discussions on this, right, I think we need to find out if the town's really interested in pursuing this. Otherwise, we can talk about this all we want. If the town's not really keen on pursuing this,
Now, there are developers out there that we can, like you were talking about, you know, with the tiny homes, what have you. And there could be an RFP process if it goes forward. I mean, there could be that RFP process where we can,
Yeah, I mean, there's a million different things. I mean, whether a lot needs to be, I mean, is it gonna be rental, is it gonna be
Yeah.
home-owned, is it gonna be a single structure, or detached, or all the
Yeah.
variety of housing types. But I think the first thing is, yes,
Yes.
maybe, I don't know where you came in, but it is, the question is, what does the financial authority of the town want to do? And if the non-communication is meant to be, well, I don't want to talk about it.
I don't think it went to the council.
no, this did not go to the council.
No.
Right.
I'm
So,
telling you.
So,
if it's the
So when that
manager who
came up-
doesn't be held up by the council,
It's,
So
we
why
have to
did-
get it to the council.
Yeah,
right, so can we,
so we can,
can we reinitiate that discussion to put this in front of the town council?
yes.
Hear what they have to say first.
Right.
And then have more discussion around like, you know, how we can approach
So,
this.
so would next step be have it added to the agenda, or does somebody just need to go to the council and say,
I
no,
sent,
This
I
is something
sent,
no, I think, in my opinion, strongly, we need to talk to the seller. And the representative of the seller is the state rep, so that we then can be informed as to the status. If the seller is willing to give a non-repayment type loan, whatever current language they're using. So basically, the process, I think, we're not here, is that, you know, there are all kinds of state laws about this, about getting rid of state-owned property. You get an appraiser, the state has their own appraisers. They establish a value, but sometimes, since it's public policy that the state's saying you've got to add affordable housing, they may simply say, we're going to give you a mortgage that if you do what is good for our public policy and you complete affordable housing units, we will then waive the payment of the loan, and we'll consider the loan repaid. I've seen that in lots. I used to do a lot of work for CHFA in urban areas, and there was always a surplus or excess or underused. And in order to get something done, the state has that ability.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
We met with Carrie already, and my interpretation of what she said was that our next step specifically was to put it before the council so that they could express an interest in it. And she told me she didn't care if they just emailed her and said it. She'd be fine and she'd pursue it. She didn't.
So she needs an affirmative interest from the town of
That's
Rocky
correct.
Hill.
That's the top step.
Exactly, exactly.
And once that happens, then she will pursue it at the state level in a couple different ways. The main way and proper way is to go to the Department of Transportation and and say we have an interest, they then, it kicks a time frame for them to have it resurveyed, and come up with a number. Now, I would like, when we go to the town manager, or put it on the council's agenda, I would like to express to them that we're stopped on this, and once we get a number from the state, then we can start looking for grants. Because we're not only asking the town to buy it.
Right.
I think we need something from the town that says that
Exactly.
they want it, whether it's free or we pay for it.
Right.
I agree
That's
with you.
the, yeah.
Yeah, and everybody understands there's a lot
Or
of
interest.
additional expense.
Yeah, so as
Yeah.
Tom mentioned, right, I think where we are, we have spoken to Kerry Woods, and I think it's like if the town shows interest, then we could explore, you know, avenues to get grants, some kind of, you know, way.
Somehow have some deal through CHFA with a
exactly.
forgivable mortgage.
Mortgage,
Or
or
whatever.
There've been
Exactly.
other, there've been other like redevelopment, I know you served on redevelopment, did you not?
I did.
Because you seem like you served
I
on
did.
many different boards. So,
I was when they bought the property at
were you
Route
Green
3
at
and,
Maple? It was like
No,
a deed that
no.
went from.
West Street.
Okay, because there was, when Green at Maple came in, where the assisted living is, and the senior housing in Maxwell Park.
That was the other, that's like here, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
But what happened there, it was like, basically, it was a transfer, it kind of just passed through the town. It
Right.
didn't really, we really didn't have much in the way
Yeah.
of ownership of it at the time, but it kind of just
So, but
passed.
the town had the first right of
That's
refusal.
correct, that's correct.
And
And
the
then it
same with
passed.
the Eversource land, where, the other corner of Route 3, the southeast corner.
Town Center West.
Yeah.
Yep.
And at the time, the developer was offering something, it's a whole different issue I don't want to get into, to the town,
Yeah.
like $600,000. So there, all these things
It's all
are
different.
negotiable.
Yes.
And it's fallow now. I think what we as a committee, what we want to put there, everybody agrees it makes sense. But somehow we have these people who can't talk to each other. I don't know if it's just the fact that we need an affirmative interest.
Right.
And then let Carrie do her stuff. Well, why is that so hard? Can't we do that tomorrow?
Vote on
Try.
this.
We can certainly try.
Do you need
I
a
approve
formal-
Kim and Vina to send an email to the town manager and the mayor and say, hey, we want to put this on an agenda.
Is this a formal motion?
I'll motion for that.
Didn't we do that?
We did,
You did, and I did.
right. And I'll second that we
I'll
should
motion
do
for
it
a
again.
second email to.
All in
Yeah.
agreement?
I,
Pretty good that I like to do this.
and if all else fails, we can
Do it a third time.
come.
And then
in
when
fall.
it is on the agenda, members will be present.
Well, that's what I would recommend. If it comes to the agenda, or if it doesn't come to the agenda,
Yes.
we can,
But
you know, I would
I'll
say
let you
somebody
know.
come
I'll
to
let
the town council meeting and say, hey, we as the affordable housing, because you can speak on our behalf as a
Sure.
chair.
When is the next town council meeting?
2 weeks.
Yeah,
Monday was
I
the
I
last.
suggest we do this in concert with Carrie Woods, okay, that, we don't wanna.
Yeah.
We
Don't just jump to the next meeting.
No, I know.
Hang on.
But
Yeah.
I think we have already
Yeah.
spoken to Kerry Woods on a couple of occasions.
Yeah.
And she has been very clear that the town needs to initiate interest before, you know, there could be more movement on this. So right now, I think the town council either needs to say like, okay, let's explore what we can do with this, or just say like, nope, we're not doing it, and then the
Yeah.
conversation ends.
Do
Not necessarily.
Well,
yeah, it doesn't totally end.
Sorry.
So we have the land acquisition and farmland preservation committee. Have they ever talked about this spot at all?
No,
too?
that's a whole nother story.
I know it's a whole other,
That's a whole nother issue. There's too many committees that do too many things.
too many land committees.
But, no, to my knowledge, they have not.
all right, so moving
They've
on.
been concentrating on farmland, I think.
Yeah, but I didn't know.
Yeah, I don't think they have.
So I think we can move on, number 5. Discussion
Number five.
on the Hartford Courant article.
Yeah, and I didn't know if she was.
That law was passed by the House and the Senate, and now it's before the governor to sign it or not.
Is that,
The whole thing.
Yeah.
you're talking about this?
5,000.
Okay, well, that's, I'm gonna get to later. I was gonna get to that kind of later under the, number 8,
So yeah, that article,
Okay,
yeah.
I don't think it had been passed at that point. I think
No, I
when the
think it's
article
more of
came
a-
through.
No.
Yeah.
Recommendation.
But it has now.
it has, not signed yet,
No.
as far as I know.
No, that's just a lot of work for
And
someone.
92 pages, I believe, was the final.
Oh,
was the final
so I
deal.
printed the 160-page draft.
Oh, okay.
So
Well, that's with all of the other
that's good
lines
to
of
know. Okay.
definitions and all those things, but yeah. Or I think, no, the final amendment for the House was 92 pages.
Thank you.
I did not read the whole thing.
Yeah, I know. I-
Blanked over about the second page of definitions.
okay. So, did you want to go over strong towns and then get back to, because I was really planning on discussing that under,
It's up to our chair.
Well, so Derek spoke a little bit about the strong towns before you came. Derek from the public.
Derek from the public.
yeah.
The one thing I'll add, because they have a podcast too that's pretty useful. I listened to that. Yep, I listened to one of the last articles was about sprawl. So the idea of suburbs and sprawl. And it was very interesting talking about the advantages of denser housing because it has less infrastructure impacts. You don't need to lay as many pipes and pave as many roads and, run as much wiring and dig up as much stuff if you have things closer together versus suburbs with windy roads, and eventually those things all need to be paved and policed and cover larger areas and all that. So it was just interesting because the main thing, and this is a lot of the other affordable housing pushes talk about, well, we just need more housing. We need more of everything. And they're saying, like, that's great and all, but you're discounting the fact that some of this is actually more sustainable than others. And sometimes, denser housing is, arguably more sustainable than single-family homes with big 1-acre lots. I would encourage anybody to look up. It's just called Strong Towns, I think, the podcast. There's some
I mean,
stuff there I had
there's a
never
need
really.
for affordable, single-family homes too.
Yes.
And whether it be on smaller lots, tiny homes, ones of,
Yeah.
like a common interest community of detached homes. I mean,
Well,
it's-
obviously, and obviously as a realtor by profession, I see the value in home ownership, certainly, and wealth building and all of those things, and it's more, that ownership is more sustainable as well for individuals. But this was another take in terms of, just condos versus single-family detached and all that. It's good. It's good. I would recommend everybody just kind of educate yourself about that perspective as well, too.
Regarding affordable housing in general, and I'm talking about statutory affordable housing, I mean, we have to make housing more affordable for people, and there's different ways to do that, but under the statutory guidelines, developers that we sit with, they're more than willing to do your 100% area median income. They're more than willing, with some hedging, to do the 80% AMI. When you get down to the 60 and 40, which is something we need to provide also, they swap. So, and that would be nice if we could get developments that instead of having just 80%, we
Yeah.
actually require.
Yeah, and unfortunately, when you return on investment is factored in.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
You know,
That's
it
why the
becomes
debts
a
are
lot more
high.
challenging, and you need a lot more help to get the 20 and 40 and
Yes.
60.
Yep.
But that's where somebody has to provide a subsidy, and, or kind of combination of somebody's. It could be on the assessment, the tax rate, it could be the lender provides, or government gives. It exists, I mean, CHFA and all, they do, they have ranges of, they
Yeah,
have mixed
they,
income.
they do better interest rates if you're 40 or 60 versus 80.
It's basically someone in the government has said we're going to have 25%, 50%,
Yeah.
60%, or a mix of it. I think Rockamora's development has some 60% units at the corner
I
of
believe
New
so.
Britain Avenue and.
Kobe?
Yeah. There's gotta be some reason, or basically every developer
Yeah, no.
looking for something.
Yeah, the developer's not just gonna say, you know what, I'll take 20% less profit.
No, but again, it's just a question of how it's done. And again, if we eventually get to the next time strategies for funding, there are different ways of raising funds, and one way is eliminating expense. And that could be the town says, okay, we're not going to, we're gonna have a lower assessment for X, Y, Z.
Yeah, that's convincing the town on that.
Any other comments?
Thank you, Derek, for providing, Derek Public.
Derek Public.
Strong towns.
Yeah. Derek Public provided that, and Derek Public also provided. I put a copy of your assessment in here.
Oh, the checklist.
Yes, yes. Now,
was
Derek and I
actually
spoke
gonna-
on the phone after this, which was really nice, and I appreciate that. So we spoke on the
So,
phone about that.
so you confirmed his 3 out of 6 on the checklist?
Oh, we had a conversation.
Oh,
Yeah.
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 So that was one thing that, that I was gonna ask about was the single-family conversion duplex or triplex by right. Was there anything in 5002 around something to do with
Well, they talk about allowing certain types of housing developments, I think it's 2 to 9 units.
Yeah.
There were certain things.
It's like
about-
commercial to
in commercial-
multifamily.
Commercial zones. They talk
Yeah,
about-
Commercial to
on page
multifamily
2
by right,
Yeah.
or something
This
like that?
document.
It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Middle
That was one
housing.
aspect of it.
Allow middle housing development 2 through 9 units as of right on any lot that is zoned for commercial use.
Yeah.
Which is something that I know at the commission level and in our draft POCD, Planning Conservation Development, we're talking about allowing that on Solacene Highway. But the process wasn't determined. The process is determined, or will be determined. And that's, once again, since I was hired in this town many, many years ago, I've been asked to be fired because I'm pro-affordable housing, so that's okay, I'm proud of that, so.
Thanks for sticking around.
I'm proud of that, so.
Yeah, and I think the objection for that aspect of the, by right is that, if somebody wants to convert a commercial building to multifamily 2 to 9 units, it doesn't even have to go to get approval, it's just automatically approved. There's no public hearing, there's no, any of that, right?
The state's
Yeah,
taken away
This
some
is,
of the
this is
authority in
very
town.
different from what our commission, Planning and Zoning
Yeah.
Commission, has done in the past. The process over the years has gone from more of a site plan with a few public hearings
Yeah.
type things to more public hearings and less site plans. And now this is just taking all that away.
Well,
It's staff now.
One day the building
It's
just
happening.
changes and you're like, what's going on here? Oh,
Because
they're
it would
putting
be
in a
building permits.
So,
Yeah.
does that
That's-
one, as of right, I'm sorry if, can I ask a
No.
question?
Through the
Yeah.
chair.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What does as of right mean? Does that mean that staff can permit it, or
Would
the staff is not even
be
required?
through a zoning permit.
Okay.
They show up with a shovel and
It's gonna
sign
be
for
like
rent.
a zoning permit.
Yeah, I'm
The
not,
objection-
What we
that
do
passed.
Is that it's
It's,
removed.
it's waiting to be signed, well, the bill,
To me,
everything's
that
about-
seems awfully stupid.
is waiting to be signed by the
It's
governor.
removing my input,
So,
your input.
yeah, this
It's
is
taking-
very interesting.
I mean,
Normal
the
way to
people
do
who
it is
serve
have
on
a
planning and zoning,
Talk to the
generally
town.
they have done it for X years. And they have a
Yeah.
lot of experience. And they also know that there's bound to be somebody who lives in the neighborhood or whatever, or remembers something.
I know.
It just seems to me,
The idea of as a right versus, well, you have this option, you know, it's, I don't, you know,
It's gonna be,
it's hard to take away neighbors' input type thing, you know?
but it's not New England. It's not, it's just not how, from an old person remembering her when she was a student.
Hey.
Just,
She's still learning.
yeah,
always,
it's, because you'll get every idiot from New Jersey, or New York who's gonna, are gonna come here and think,
Apologize to New York. Oh, sorry, let me include New York in that too.
and the,
I don't know.
the excesses, I just, and then once it's on the books, it's hard to deal with.
I always,
It's a
you know,
frustration by, I guess, the lawmakers as to why isn't there more affordable housing? You can't legislate it. I mean, there's 1,000 different things.
You can't force somebody to build something. Ultimately, you have, you know, you can't, you know, you have to dig this
They've
or.
made so many regulations on the building side that the cost of construction is up. Now granted, they may say that's for safety or whatever, or for unions to get, work, or this is everything in the world. But the desirability of an area is somebody wanna build, just put boxes like the vessel, they're just gonna throw crazy things together. And, to get the affordable housing approval, and then in the long term, we don't know what this vessel will look like, but it's still intriguing. I think it's too far, but that's not on the table.
Yeah, when they give the authority for any builder to come in and do something by right, that would open the door for builders who we otherwise, who would really wouldn't be qualified under our existing standards, or wouldn't care about community standards. They then could come in and do something that we wouldn't approve of normally.
I don't know.
The other aspect of that bill that concerns me is the number of housing units that they say Rocky Hill, Rocky Hill should have. They measured it in 3 different ways. One way said that we have to get 869 units. Another way said we need 987. And the third way said that we need 1,329 units. We're gonna have to buy a lot of land.
Yeah, my understanding with the, is that each of the groups, like CROG is ours. I forget what they're called, different, you know, neighborhoods around metro areas or whatnot. You have that whole area needs to be 10%, and then that's appointed to different towns, and then they give you a number, but then the legislature next year votes on whether that's the correct number. And you argue amongst yourselves to agree, like, all the legislature has to agree that everybody's numbers are, and it sounds like a mess. But that's the continuation of like fair share from
Yeah.
the past that hadn't been approved before.
I haven't read the 5,002 yet, but if anybody did, right? So say there's somebody who comes in and builds a 6-family, multifamily, right? 6-unit multifamily, does that count as affordable? Because,
Only if it's deed restricted.
so,
Yeah.
because what
Yeah,
I
by
read here
C-section.
is making housing affordable. This is not talking about affordable housing as we've gone through the definition, right? Like, somebody can come and build 200 apartments, doesn't count towards affordable housing.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
at least the aspect of that is that it is changing the way that like 10% mandate is organized a little bit. But the bill is not just, I mean, you know, the title of it, an act concerning housing and needs of homelessness. It's not a bill for affordable housing.
Right.
But the communities must further the Fair Housing Act. The Fair Housing Act talks about housing opportunities for all, which means middle housing, which means more rental units, which means single-family homes, which means renter, owner. It means affordable as defined by statute. It means accessory dwelling units. It means tiny homes. It means people that live in town downsizing. It means young folks looking for homes in their community. It means for people living elsewhere that want to move in. So it means a rash of things. So that's a lot of what this is about
Right.
also.
I get that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, yes, it addresses a lot of the chronic housing issues, for sure. But, and this is good knowledge, but I don't think this affects affordable housing in any way, like, you know, the 10% goal that we need to achieve as a town.
Yeah.
This is not gonna help us get there, right? So,
May not, or it may, depending on whether they do a deed restriction,
which,
that's
Yeah.
not.
absent incentive,
Yeah,
you know, you're not gonna find any developer who's gonna do that.
right.
Unless the regulations state that you must provide. And I know through just talking with developers, there have been projects that have been approved with affordable units when there's no requirement or regulations at the time to do so. Because we as staff would talk to them and said, you know, when you get to the commission, they're gonna be asking for this too. So wouldn't it be nice if you could, you know,
Come in with it, yeah.
and so they have. Regulations are slowly changing to require it. And once our plan of conservation and development is passed, we're going to be rewriting our zoning regs and be including
And if-
more for affordable.
If a developer comes in a by right situation, would that still apply to them? Would they have to take
Okay,
it?
by right, well, I don't know what the regulations are gonna be
Yeah.
on these things, but, because there will be.
I asked the
some
question, I don't
reg-
have any of the
regulations,
answers.
yeah. But we can certainly maybe include that.
Can the town have a regulation that, okay, if you're gonna build more than 5 units, you gotta designate 20% or 1 unit towards affordable housing?
That's something we could do. But that's
Yeah,
what
I think that's
they
within
might-
our
Yeah.
Right.
power that we could do.
I think that's how we can make.
Well, it's through our regulations. Like when we have the mixed use in the town center zone, you must have X percentage affordable. In the regional commercial zone, you're building multifamily, you must have X percentage affordable.
And
That's
so
in our
can that
regulations.
recommendation be part of the POCD?
Correct. Yes.
So when they're
Recommendation
affordable,
that we can make to POCD saying, and again, I don't know, like, you know, whether 5 units is a number or 10 units is a number, right? Where we could mandate a certain percentage of the units being built to be affordable.
well, it conveys to a density bonus, doesn't it? I don't have the law in front of me. The incentive for the 20% or the 80% of median income is you get a density bonus, correct? Isn't that the one, that's how Kelson Row and all these others are doing right now? Is
I
they're
don't know.
permitted to have additional units.
But again, I think that's more like the town gave it to them. I don't think it's a
No,
by
but-
right.
Oh, it's the state law.
Is it?
I think it was just to qualify them for CHAFA.
You know, we
Funding
asked,
aspect,
certain
right?
developers, we just asked for it, and they gave it to us. Stephanie has a regulation, because because in the regional.
But if they build 30% at 80%
But they-
median
they didn't
family,
do
they get a density bonus,
But
correct?
they didn't do that,
Yeah.
and there is no density bonus. There is no density bonus.
So why did they do it? Isn't that what the law says they have to do?
They didn't do it.
Which one are you talking about?
I was talking about Stephanie Place. Stephanie Place, under the regional commercial zone, they have to provide affordable.
Well, they're before any kind of.
They had to do a minimum of 10% designated for affordable. That was effective in 2022 in that zone.
And then the commission asked them to add additional units. That was there.
Yeah, they always ask.
And they did.
Push it if you can. That's right.
Yeah, because they had to, because they asked, and they were
But-
also asking for a couple of exceptions for something, right? And that's why they were like, okay, well, if we give you the other 5%, will you approve this?
But
Was that
it
type of
wasn't an
thing?
830G application.
Yeah, that wasn't an 830G.
That wasn't 830G. In the office park zone, there was a regulation amendment and a change for multifamily housing on certain size acreage with a minimum of 20% to be designated affordable defined by statute.
Thank you, Derek Public.
Take care.
So we have that. In the town center, we have that requirement also for a percentage of affordable as well. And this is in our current regulations. Now, our plan of conservation development as proposed asks for, they talk about middle housing, gotta get back to those pages, which is what this House Bill, 5002 is talking about, 2 to 9.
Middle is defined as less than 80% of median family income.
I think middle housing is
It's-
just defined as
It's
the number of
more of
units.
the number of units.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
150 units, and it's not a single-family
It's like 2 to
home.
10
It's,
or something. Create
It's the
reg-
middle of a range.
Yeah,
Yeah.
create regulations
that's
for
why it's
middle
2 to
housing
9.
in residential and commercial areas. Maintain affordable housing in the zoning regulations to be consistent with state statutes. Plan for additional senior units, senior housing units, even though the housing authority deals with other folks. So it's to meet current and anticipated future needs for affordable housing. So there's a few things in here about affordable housing here, so. Because this is a whole rewrite we need to do with the regulations. So. And I haven't really gone through this is just a summary right now. I have my notes, unfortunately, in the office, but, and then I'm gonna read the bill itself.
I'm sure if
Which will-
the governor ends up signing it, there'll
Yes.
be more
Oh, yeah.
summaries and stuff like that
Yeah.
about all the things that now you've got to implement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll probably have to do those, we'll probably have to implement those regulations, because there'll be a time frame on those,
Yeah.
before we get to do the total rewrite of the zoning regs. Because that's gonna, has to happen too.
Yeah.
So there'll be a lot to do, but that's fine.
All right.
It's like more interesting.
Where are we at? Was that just agenda item 8? I think we
That was
went.
like
I think
7 and 8.
we went through
Yeah.
6
5.
and 8.
I want you to be aware that the Plan of Conservation and Development public hearing is the 18th of this month.
Oh, my.
And there is one public hearing before that for a zoning regulation change. That regulation change hearing will start at 6:30, and once that's completed, then you'll get into the Plan of
And
Conservation
that's
and
on the
Development.
18th, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a P and Z.
That's planning and zoning, yeah. So, feel free to come on down.
Any volunteers?
Enjoy the fun.
And then you know what? If you're the only person that shows up, sometimes you just get to participate.
That's the reason I'm asking for any volunteers is because I am
Was that the 18th?
out of country from
18th.
15th.
That's It's also during the Juneteenth.
Yes, yeah, I know, I'm going to miss it.
Was it for you?
Well,
The-
it's
the-
work,
The
work
hearing,
trip, so.
the hearing starts
Time.
at 6:30. And
Well,
this
I
will
will
come up
definitely,
after
but,
that, whatever that hearing is done.
somebody else.
So it,
I don't know,
okay.
it probably won't be too
This
long.
committee wants to go.
I'll
And
touch base.
I guess I won't be there. So.
I wanted to go to the
If she doesn't need me, I'll just watch it.
I have a commercial real
And
estate
then-
seminar that day in West Hartford. It's like all day. That's really good.
I'll try to get it.
I'm not here.
No, you won't be here.
I won't be
I'm
here.
in Bedford.
So I won't call you.
Tom volunteered though.
I'll go.
Okay.
and You let me know what you need and take care of it.
Okay.
I think I'll have to try to be in 3 places
Check
at
my
once.
calendar and see if I lied that day.
Yeah, 'cause I got an event. Commercial real
18th
estate.
is gonna be a Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Yeah. We meet the third Wednesday of the month. Maybe turn.
And sometimes it goes into the third Thursday of the month.
That's not gonna.
No, it doesn't. Only
Very
no.
close.
And that won't be canceled, right? So a lot of the P and Z meetings get canceled.
Not my meeting.
Okay. all
I've
right.
canceled two
Two?
since I've
Okay.
started there.
Yeah, P and Z
Just
doesn't
ask.
usually, no, the hearing
Yeah.
sometimes gets delayed until the next one or something like that. But
Right.
the meeting still usually takes place. Because they've got a big, there's a
Yep.
bunch of people, so if 3 are out of town or whatever, it
Yeah,
still
they-
happens.
Yeah.
All right, did we have any other?
So,
New business.
new business,
I know we want to talk about, you wanted,
Our event? Have we done a?
we haven't done a.
Postmortem?
Yeah, I know. that's what I'm saying.
postmortem,
Yeah,
I think we can add that for a quick discussion.
yeah, because we had a housing forum, not well attended, but great information.
Mhm.
Great information. I do think that it would be nice to share that with others. I mean, it's on our YouTube
YouTube.
channel,
We have the video, yeah.
but it would be nice to share it with others, so they can get that information. I don't know,
How would you?
How many
Just
have
public
viewed
or share
that, I
with
wonder?
towns?
so I don't know, probably not many.
What are you
I don't
saying?
know.
Where do people find that? I don't see. Let me see. See how many people
Oh,
saw it.
yeah.
All the votes come out.
No. Well, no.
Yeah.
This phone is
So, look it up.
down to 7%. So, but it was very good information, I thought.
63
It
views.
was great.
There we go.
63.
See?
That's not bad.
63
Not at all.
people have gotten that information now.
Yep.
Well,
So
I mean,
that's-
Well, we can deduct one from it, but yeah.
yeah,
Okay, that's fine.
60 plus.
60 people. Would
So,
it be nice
see,
for
there
them
you
to
go.
show up?
That's a high
Yeah.
view count for
I know.
That means it was worth
two
Yeah.
videos here.
You know,
Well, it was good. And if nothing else, it was also information for all of us.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think there was,
Yeah.
I mean, I
To
found a
inform our
lot of
future.
some of the information.
Yeah, very,
Well,
very
something like
informative.
this is also there, so.
Yeah,
it
and
would
we
be actually good
Built some of those
information.
relationships with the folks that came and
Absolutely.
contributed, so.
Yeah.
Good first.
I think from a content perspective, I think it was perfect, especially for some first-time home buyers that we were targeting. It was information that they could really use. I think we just need to or come up with a better plan to attract more people to show up. Like, you know, when we're gonna do this next time, is to have some more solid marketing, advertising, what do you call it, so that, you know, it's more
Yeah.
participation.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that is just, targeting the audience part too. Because I do think that it's a very different, audience of the first-time home buyer versus a renter looking to save money.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
I think those are kind of two different audiences, but two groups that still need the information,
Yes,
you know?
yes.
It probably coincides with the low number of transactions in the marketplace right now. You know, a lot of people just aren't in the market because there's not something they can afford, or they think mortgage rates are too high, or they'll come down. I mean, in Rocky Hill, I don't think there are many houses being built now. Are there any, Kim?
Two, maybe.
Yeah,
something like
not
that.
many.
Single
No.
digits if
Side note, but I saw a report yesterday, the average age of a home purchaser, not first-time home buyer, average age of a home purchaser, it is now 56.
This is
That's
Connecticut.
fine.
or-
When I was, when
Wow,
they
that's
started
interesting.
tracking it,
Interesting.
when they started tracking it,
Downsize.
roughly, when I was born, the early 80s, it was 31.
And this is national.
This is
National
national,
average.
national
Wow,
numbers.
that's-
But there's studies,
That's interesting.
there's, the most interesting study though is pre and post pandemic, first time home buyers.
Yeah.
Pre-pandemic, it was 31 was the average age of the first time home buyer, and it was trending down. It was gonna be below, it was trending to be below 30 for the first time since like the 80s. Now it is 38 and trending the other way, and that number was from a year, like probably a year ago or so.
Right.
It's probably closer to 40 now.
You have to factor in the demographics and the baby boom bulge.
Oh, yeah.
you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
So there's probably
sure, yeah,
way
all
more
these
that feed
factors.
into
There's
that.
a lot of factors,
That's
but
interesting.
it was the average age of the first time home buyer had changed, and just so the most home purchases across the country were baby boomers until about 3 years ago or so, 3, 4, or 5 years, something like that. It became millennials were the largest purchasing group, and now it is back to baby boomers. So,
That stuff's fun, that's very interesting, that's very.
and it's just because of the affordability aspect.
Mm.
You have more young people with more debt. You have the older generations, boomers or whatever, that have more equity in wealth
Yeah.
in the houses that they built in there, and just
Downsizing.
Downsizing, I
Yeah.
think, is kind
I
of
don't-
adds to the.
there's not a lot of people downsizing right now. Well, maybe nationwide.
No, but like nationwide, I'm saying like,
Yeah.
when baby boomers, you're saying like, are major contributors to the home buying. It's probably.
Or relocating after retirement, so on, if that's,
Yeah.
the boomers, because we're all retired.
But I thought that was interesting that it was
It
like,
is.
okay, now the next generation of purchasers is millennials, and then it went back the other way.
Yeah, that's very surprising.
Because of there's the economics of the current economy.
Well,
Yeah.
the baby boomers have a sunset coming up, and it's pretty hard to push that sunset off. And that may change some things, but younger people don't want the housing that their parents had and all the crap.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them have just lost hope in being able to attain it as well.
Yeah.
I think they
that's
do
one,
want the
and
freedom
what
that
he
comes
said,
with
I think
homeownership,
there is
but-
more, like, nobody wants to do yard work.
Yeah, they don't want that.
Well,
But
I
they
don't
want the yard.
I
want
don't,
the yard.
I don't
They
know
want
if
the
there's
yard, so, for them, it's like condos work out best because you don't have to worry about maintaining it, but while you get some,
Or the tiny
Yeah,
homes.
but-
The
But
tiny
there's
homes.
also a great number of people, I don't know what the name is for them, millennials or whatever, that may have a dog but not children. And then that has an impact. And
Yeah, how
generally,
much
they're gonna
space
look
do you
for
need and
a
things
yard.
like that.
But there was an interesting thing I saw, and I don't know how valid it is that there's a movement away from Florida and California and so on. And I'm not gonna say it's climate change, but the cost of living in California or Florida or coastal somewhere is enormous. And, people left here and they said, oh, the property taxes down there, they're nothing. But the home
Insurance.
insurance.
You can't insure,
is
it's very difficult to insure
Insurers-
homes.
Insurers are
Yeah,
pulling
if
out.
you can, and so people are moving to the upper Midwest and so on. The low cost cities are, you know, the Buffaloes and the Albanys and so on. There was a study that showed where was the least amount of inventory. And the person who wrote it originally came from upstate New York. It was Albany, that there were the fewest number of homes for sale was there.
Yeah, I think that.
And he
makes
says,
sense.
look, there's a Capitol and a couple of universities, but there's nothing
There's
there.
not, once you get past Albany, it's all farmland.
Yeah.
It really is.
But for a baby boomer to spend days where it's less risk of loss, because they always say an elderly person can't afford to, they don't have the time to recover from a financial loss. So there's a lot, the basic point is there are a lot of changes going on, driven by one, weather, and the other, how it impacts housing and so on. We live here and, you know, one day we're worried about something freezing and backing up, and the next day is,
And now we're breaking out in sweat because it's 95 degrees.
yeah, and if you wanted to paint, if you were a painter, as a profession, it's not been a very good spring to do that.
It's been a very good year for a lot of painters, I think.
All right, so moving on, next meeting and agenda. So question number one, point number one, I won't be here for the next month's meeting. Do you all, or Charles, do you intend to have a meeting next month that's in July? Or do you wanna have the next meeting in August?
What would be the
I
date?
think July's gonna be a different date, because of the first year.
I have a family reunion, and I think it's like 8 to 16 or something like that.
It's a long reunion.
July was supposed to be 10th.
Yeah, we switched it to
To the 10th, I'll have to communicate, I don't think I'll
I recommend that we cancel the July meeting.
or we go to a different day. If you want to.
17th, 24th.
Yeah, well, I'd have to see what's available, but it could be a Thursday. I mean, I could see what's available and send out an email and see if people want to have a meeting.
They could
But-
do okay without us.
But no matter what would be on the next agenda, because no matter when the meeting will be, we want to talk about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we want to talk about the housing trust fund or housing.
The housing fund.
There we go, yes.
Oh, I have a thing. Okay.
We want to update on the,
And 291,
Date on
291.
Yeah, 291. And maybe see where,
and then,
if 5002 has been signed by the governor, maybe we
sure,
yeah,
talk about that.
that'll be the longest conversation.
And what the
It's the longest bill.
council feels.
Like I said, the last amendment was 92 pages.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that there was something unfolding for the town's housing authority.
Oh, yeah, maybe see what the status is
Yeah.
of that.
we could even have, you want that?
Yeah, my
I'll talk
understanding
to-
in
Yeah.
talking with Sue was that she had a big
Yeah.
draft of the layout and everything. Yeah, the challenge was around 1 story or 2, and if it's 2-story, it has to be ADA, and then you have an elevator, and that's super expensive.
Actually, I talked with her a
And
while
also
back.
around whether there needs to be accommodations for family and stuff like that too, and that's, which is different than the current housing authority setup. But-
Two-story they have in Newington, and it's stairs. And if anybody becomes non-mobile, they prioritize moving them to the first story. So they do have 3 housing authority builds, properties.
Yep.
And some do have 2 stories. And again, if people are mobile and can go up and down stairs, they're entitled to have a second story. But if they it becomes difficult for them, then they prioritize moving them to
It's proper.
obviously a lower
Yeah.
unit. So they're, without the elevator component,
Yeah.
so.
It just,
As a matter of my interest, and maybe other members here, if Is there a date that Vessel is supposed to open?
Not that I'm aware of.
But I would like to see those units at some point in time.
Okay, I can, what I can do is I can.
I don't know if anybody else is
Oh,
interested.
I'm very
I'd like to
interested.
see what the inside
Yeah.
of this looks like,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do go by there every once in a while to see their progress.
They were stopped for a while, but I think they're back working on
Why
it.
were they stopped?
My understanding is something about the design, you know, because they're like modular, you know, they're all put together and stuff. There's something to do with the width of hallways or something. Was
But the hallways
questions.
are unusual in that
Well,
they're open on the top.
The stairways,
And they have
yeah.
steel grates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
That's how-
because it really is outside.
But
Yeah.
also
The hallway
it goes to
is
fire marshal
technically
issues as well.
outside. And this is something new that the state building official basically was consulted on every step of the way, because this is new.
They hadn't seen it before. And they had an issue with their property, with the building of their property in
West
New London,
Yeah.
something to do with their wiring. And they had to get past that,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
because,
But also, I think West Hartford has a community under construction, and their review maybe identified something that is causing
yeah, they
issues
caused
in
them
it.
to stop too.
Yeah. But I
Because
talked,
it's new everything's new technology.
yeah,
so
but
it's-
the fire marshal in Rocky Hill, I think he said, he thought that they were coming as units pretty much pre-wired and pre-plumbed, but he said no.
I think it's
The-
just the exterior panels all come as one chunk.
Yeah,
or
it's
something
like a
that.
balloon, it's, the
Yeah.
unit, if there's water penetration, it won't move to the other balloon.
Go to the other.
Yeah, it's-
They're like
I don't
little
understand, that's why I
cells.
think it would be
I don't
interesting.
think that worked for the
Yeah, can we
Titanic,
get a
but-
tour? Can we get a tour and can we also start taking things apart?
No.
We're there.
But there's also kind of a screen that's on the outside.
Yeah,
Have they
around the
installed
stairwell.
that yet in Rocky Hill?
Around the stairwells and stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of like a huge net. I don't know.
When I lived in Michigan, there were a lot of apartment buildings that all had, they were maybe 3 stories, and they had stairways outside. Like, we don't see it a lot here necessarily, but I mean,
It's what
it works. And if it's done cheaper, then that means they can provide the housing for cheaper.
So,
Interesting
I
though.
think Kim's gonna check on the dates, and then Charles and
I'll do
Alan
that.
can decide if you wanna have a meeting in July.
Hey, if I'm available, I'll be here.
If not,
Tell me the date.
in August. That's that. Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in agreement?
Aye.
Thank you.
Alright. Thank you very much.
Everyone?
Oh, as a point of trivia, I am a baby boomer, but
So
I'm,
am I.
but I'm in a subset called Generation Jones.
What does that mean?